Sarah Chen pulled into the circular driveway of Brookfield Academy, her Tesla humming quietly as she parked among the lineup of luxury vehicles. The pristine brick facade and manicured lawns spoke of old money and older traditions, exactly what she'd wanted for Maya when she'd written that first tuition check 3 years ago. Back then, the astronomical fee had stung, representing months of 18-hour days building her cybersecurity firm from her cramped apartment. Now watching her 8-year-old daughter skip toward the entrance with her backpack bouncing, Sarah knew every sacrifice had been worth it. Maya turned back with that radiant smile that could light up server rooms and boardrooms alike. "Love you, Mama. See you at Heritage Day. Love you too, sweetheart. Remember, we're celebrating what makes you special today." Heritage Day at Brookfield Academy was supposedly the crown jewel of their diversity initiatives, a day when students showcased their cultural backgrounds through presentations, traditional foods, and the coveted group photograph that would grace the school's website and fundraising materials for years to come. Sarah had spent weeks helping Maya prepare a presentation about her Chinese grandmother's immigration story and her late father's Irish heritage, watching her daughter's eyes shine as she practiced pronouncing Mandarin phrases. The morning flew by in a blur of colorful displays and proud parents. Maya's presentation drew genuine applause, her confidence blooming as she shared family photos and taught classmates to write their names in Chinese characters. Sarah's chest swelled with pride, filming every moment on her phone. Then came time for the Heritage Day photograph. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, a 25-year veteran of Brookfield Academy with silver hair pulled into a severe bun, positioned the children with military precision. Sarah watched from the sidelines as Maya found her spot among her classmates, practically glowing in her red kippah dress that had belonged to Sarah's grandmother. "Maya Chen," Mrs. Whitman's voice cut through the chatter with practiced authority. "Step out of the group, please." Maya's smile faltered. "Did I do something wrong, Mrs. Whitman?" "Not wrong, dear, you just don't quite fit the image we're going for today." The teacher's tone remained pleasant, almost maternal, but her words landed like ice water. "Perhaps you could help me with the camera equipment instead?" The courtyard fell silent. Other parents stopped their conversations, phones pausing mid-recording. Children stared with the uncomfortable awareness that something wasn't right, even if they couldn't articulate what. Sarah felt her world tilt. "Excuse me," she called out, stepping forward. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Mrs. Whitman's smile never wavered, practiced and plastic. "Oh, Miss Chen, Maya's presentation was lovely, of course. It's just that for our main Heritage Day photo, the one that represents our school's community, we need a certain cohesion. Maya's mixed background makes the visual narrative a bit complicated for our marketing materials." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire nobody wanted to acknowledge. Other parents shifted uncomfortably, suddenly fascinated by their phones or their shoes. Sarah noticed several other children of color had also been subtly moved to the edges or asked to step aside entirely. Maya stood frozen in her beautiful red dress, her small hands clenched at her sides. The confidence that had radiated from her just moments before crumbled visibly, her shoulders curving inward as if trying to make herself smaller, invisible. "Mama," Maya's voice was barely a whisper as she turned toward Sarah, her dark eyes brimming with tears. "Why can't I be in the picture? What's wrong with me?" Sarah's vision narrowed to a tunnel. Her daughter, brilliant, kind, perfect Maya, who spent weekends coding simple games and reading to shelter dogs, stood there believing she was somehow less than the children still posed for the camera. Children whose parents wrote smaller tuition checks, whose academic achievements paled next to Maya's, but whose appearances apparently fit the image Brookfield Academy wanted to project. The photographer, clearly uncomfortable, cleared his throat. "Should I wait? Or—" "Oh no, we'll proceed," Mrs. Whitman said briskly. "Maya, remember what I said about helping with the equipment." That evening Maya sat at their kitchen island picking at her favorite dumplings, while Sarah struggled to find words that could somehow repair what had been broken that afternoon. "Mommy," Maya said finally, her voice small and uncertain, "why am I different? Why don't I belong anywhere? The kids at my old school said I wasn't Chinese enough, and now Mrs. Whitman says I don't fit here either." Sarah pulled her daughter close, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling the rapid beat of Maya's heart against her chest. "Baby, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You are perfect exactly as you are." But even as she spoke the words, Sarah felt something cold and hard crystallizing in her chest. Maya deserved better than empty reassurances. She deserved justice. And if Brookfield Academy thought they could humiliate her daughter and walk away unscathed, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Sarah couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Maya's face crumpling in that courtyard, heard that small voice asking why she didn't belong. By 3 a.m., she was at her laptop, channeling her insomnia into investigation. It started innocently enough, browsing Brookfield Academy's website, looking at their promotional materials with fresh eyes. The Celebrating Our Diverse Community page featured smiling children of various ethnicities. But as Sarah clicked through photo galleries from actual school events, a disturbing pattern emerged. The homecoming dance photos, predominantly white faces with maybe one or two token students of color positioned strategically at the edges. The academic awards ceremony, the same. Even the International Culture Night Gallery showed mostly white students in cultural costumes, while actual immigrant families' children were mysteriously absent from the main shots. Sarah opened her security firm's most sophisticated data analysis software, the same tools she used to track cyber threats for Fortune 500 companies. If patterns were her business, she'd find this one. 3 hours later, she had her smoking gun. Cross-referencing the school's official photography with enrollment records revealed a statistical impossibility. Despite Brookfield Academy's student body being 30% non-white, promotional photos averaged less than 8% minority representation. Scholarship students, despite comprising 15% of enrollment, appeared in less than 3% of marketing materials. Maya wasn't an anomaly. She was part of a systematic pattern. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up social media. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman's Facebook profile, despite privacy settings, revealed enough through mutual connections and public posts. Comments on news articles about immigration that made Sarah's stomach turn. Shared posts from groups with names like Preserving Traditional Values and Heritage Not Hate. Photos from fundraising events where Whitman smiled beside donors whose companies Sarah recognized, corporations that had built fortunes on exclusion. The final piece fell into place when Sarah accessed board meeting minutes through a parent portal she'd forgotten she had. There it was, in corporate doublespeak, discussions about maintaining the aesthetic brand that appeals to our core donor demographic, and strategic positioning of diverse elements for optimal visual impact. Maya wasn't a student to them. She was a diverse element to be positioned strategically. Sarah pulled up her own donation records, her jaw clenching. Over 3 years, she'd contributed $75,000 to various school initiatives: the new computer lab, the arts program, the scholarship fund that supposedly supported underrepresented students. She'd believed in their mission statement, their promises of inclusivity and excellence. She'd been paying them to exclude her own daughter. The betrayal cut deeper than Maya's public humiliation. Sarah had worked herself to exhaustion building her company, missing bedtime stories and weekend trips, all so she could afford to give Maya opportunities she'd never had. She'd trusted Brookfield Academy with her most precious gift, believing they would nurture Maya's brilliance and celebrate her heritage. Instead, they'd made her daughter feel like she was too much and not enough, all at once. As dawn broke over her home office, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Morning, Mama. Do I have to go to school today?" Sarah looked at the evidence spread across her multiple monitors: screenshots, data analyses, financial records. Her daughter deserved better than this. They all did. Time to give Brookfield Academy a lesson in real diversity, the diverse ways a brilliant, determined mother could dismantle their comfortable little world of privilege and prejudice. Sarah treated her revenge like any other business venture, methodically, strategically, and with overwhelming force. By Monday morning, she'd transformed her home office into a war room, complete with whiteboards mapping out her multi-pronged attack. First, she called her legal team, the same attorneys who'd helped her navigate corporate acquisitions and patent disputes. "I need someone who specializes in educational discrimination," she told her corporate lawyer. "Someone who's made schools bleed money for this kind of behavior." Within hours, she was on a video call with Rebecca Martinez, a civil rights attorney whose Wikipedia page read like a school administrator's nightmare. Martinez had forced 3 major private schools to pay 8-figure settlements in the past 5 years alone. "What you've documented here is textbook systemic discrimination," Martinez said, reviewing Sarah's evidence files. The statistical analysis alone would make a federal judge very unhappy. But I want more. Can you get recordings? Sarah smiled grimly. I'm a cybersecurity CEO. Recording conversations is child's play. She started small, innocent inquiries that revealed telling responses. A call to the admissions office asking about their diversity initiatives yielded a 20-minute conversation where the director inadvertently admitted they maintained unofficial quotas to preserve the school culture our families expect. Another call to the photography vendor revealed they'd been specifically instructed to prioritize traditional family aesthetics in their shot selections. Every conversation was legally recorded and transcribed. Meanwhile, Sarah deployed her company's social media specialists, the same team that managed crisis communications for Fortune 500 clients. Their mission: a carefully orchestrated campaign that would highlight the gap between Brookfield Academy's public promises and private practices. The first post went live on Sarah's personal LinkedIn with its 15,000 professional connections, a side-by-side comparison of the school's diversity marketing materials versus actual event photos, accompanied by dry statistical analysis. No accusations, no emotional appeals, just data that spoke for itself. The response was immediate. Messages flooded in from other parents, other professionals, other alumni. Sarah's assistant helped her organize the responses, identifying patterns that made her blood boil and her resolve strengthen. Priya Patel, whose son had been relegated to technical support during last year's science fair photo shoot. James Washington, whose daughter mysteriously developed behavioral issues after her parents complained about similar exclusions. Maria Santos, who'd pulled her twins from Brookfield after they were told their quinceañera presentation was too ethnic for the cultural showcase. Each family had suffered in isolation, believing they were alone, that speaking up would only hurt their children more. Sarah gave them something they'd never had: solidarity and a leader with nothing left to lose. She organized secure video calls, shared encrypted documents, built a coalition that represented over $200,000 in annual tuition payments. More importantly, she gave them hope. But Sarah's masterpiece was her plan for Mrs. Whitman personally. Through her business network, she'd learned about the teacher's upcoming honor, the Educator of Excellence Award at Brookfield's annual Spring Gala, where the school's biggest donors would celebrate another year of nurturing young minds. Sarah had bought a table at that gala 3 months ago, back when she still believed in Brookfield's mission. Now that $5,000 expenditure would become the best investment she'd ever made. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While the school board and administration would face legal and financial consequences, Mrs. Whitman would face something far more devastating to someone who'd built her reputation on respectability: public humiliation in front of her peers, her employers, and the community that had celebrated her for decades. Sarah pulled up the guest list for the gala: 350 of the city's most influential families, local media, and educational leaders from across the region, all gathered to honor traditional values and academic excellence. Perfect. She opened her laptop and began typing her acceptance email for the Parent Spotlight speaking opportunity she'd been offered months ago. The irony was delicious. They'd asked her to talk about building bridges between communities. Oh, she'd build bridges, all right. Right before she burned down the walls that had kept children like Maya on the outside looking in. Time to show Brookfield Academy what happened when they messed with the wrong mother's child. The first sign of war came in the form of a phone call from Principal Harrison's office. His assistant's voice dripped with condescending concern. Miss Chen, the principal would like to discuss some concerns about miscommunications regarding Heritage Day. Would Thursday at 2 p.m. work for you? Sarah arrived at Brookfield Academy armed with her briefcase, recording device, and Rebecca Martinez on speed dial. Principal Harrison, a man who'd gladly accepted her donations for 3 years, now sat behind his mahogany desk like a fortress wall. Sarah, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about Heritage Day, he began. His smile practiced and empty. Mrs. Whitman was simply trying to create the most visually appealing photograph possible. There was no discrimination, just aesthetic decisions. Aesthetic decisions. Sarah let the words hang in the air. Are you saying my daughter isn't aesthetically pleasing enough for your school's image? Of course not. Maya is a wonderful child. But you have to understand, these photographs represent our entire community to potential families, donors, board members. Sometimes individual children need to make small sacrifices for the greater good of the school. Sarah's recording device captured every word as Harrison dug his hole deeper. So the greater good requires making children of color invisible. Now you're putting words in my mouth. Look, Sarah, you're clearly upset, and as a single mother, I understand the pressure you must feel to protect Maya. But making wild accusations about discrimination could seriously damage this school's reputation and by extension Maya's educational experience here. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Sarah smiled coldly. Are you suggesting my daughter's education might suffer if I continue asking questions about your photography policies? I'm simply suggesting that sometimes it's better for everyone if we focus on solutions rather than problems. By the time Sarah left that meeting, she had 47 minutes of recorded material that would make Rebecca Martinez very happy. But the real war began at Maya's school the following week. Sarah noticed it first in the pickup line, conversations that stopped when she approached, eyes that suddenly found their phones fascinating. Catherine Morrison, who chatted with Sarah for years about their daughter's playdates, now offered tight-lipped nods instead of warm greetings. I heard Sarah Chen is causing quite a stir, she overheard Margaret Pemberton whisper to another mother. Honestly, some people just can't be grateful for what they have. Poor Maya, having such a troublemaker for a mother. The whispers followed Maya too. Sarah's heart broke when her daughter came home asking why Emma Richardson, her best friend since kindergarten, suddenly didn't want to sit with her at lunch. Emma's mom says you're trying to hurt the school, Maya said quietly, not meeting Sarah's eyes. She says I should ask you to stop being mean to Mrs. Whitman. Mrs. Whitman herself had abandoned all pretense of professionalism. During parent-teacher conferences, she smiled sweetly while delivering psychological warfare disguised as educational feedback. Maya seems distracted lately, Whitman said, her voice honey-laced poison. Perhaps the stress at home is affecting her focus. Children are so sensitive to their parents' emotional states, aren't they? I do worry about her academic trajectory if this tension continues. Sarah wanted to reach across the desk and shake the woman until her perfect silver bun came undone. Instead, she smiled just as sweetly. I appreciate your concern for Maya's well-being. I'm sure you'll continue providing her with the same excellent education you give all your students, regardless of any external factors. The school board's response came via certified letter, a cease and desist order threatening legal action if Sarah continued her defamatory campaign. They accused her of violating her enrollment agreement's non-disparagement clause and threatened to pursue damages for harm to the school's reputation. Sarah forwarded the letter to Rebecca Martinez, who laughed so hard she started coughing. They just gave us proof of retaliation. This case gets better every day. Because something beautiful was happening alongside the ugliness. Sarah's LinkedIn posts had caught the attention of Maria Gonzalez, an investigative reporter for the city's largest newspaper. Local news stations were calling. The State Board of Education had opened a preliminary inquiry. More importantly, other parents were stepping forward, not just victims but allies. Dr. Jennifer Kim, whose son attended Brookfield, publicly supported Sarah's coalition. Tech entrepreneur David Chen, no relation despite the name, pulled his twin daughters from the school entirely, citing Sarah's evidence as the final straw. I've been watching this for years, Dr. Kim told Sarah over coffee. I kept quiet because I didn't want to rock the boat. But seeing what you're doing for Maya, for all our kids, I can't stay silent anymore. The coalition was growing beyond Sarah's expectations. 23 families now, representing over 500,000 in annual tuition. Parents, grandparents, alumni, and even some current teachers who'd witnessed the discrimination firsthand but never had the platform to speak up. As Sarah tucked Maya into bed one evening, her daughter asked, "Mama, are we winning?" Sarah kissed her forehead, breathing in her strawberry-scented hair. "We're not just winning, baby, we're changing everything." Outside, a black sedan sat parked across the street, not threatening, but watchful. Sarah recognized the investigator Rebecca Martinez had hired to document any retaliation attempts. The war was escalating, but Sarah had built an army. And in 3 weeks, at the spring gala, she would fire the shot heard around every private school in the city. The Brookfield Academy Spring Gala was everything Sarah remembered from previous years: crystal chandeliers casting warm light over tables draped in cream silk, the city's elite mingling over champagne, and carefully crafted conversations about charitable giving and academic excellence. What they didn't know was that tonight their comfortable world would shatter like the fine china beneath their feet. Sarah sat at table 12, close enough to the stage to see every micro-expression that would cross Mrs. Whitman's face, far enough back to blend with the crowd. She wore her most expensive black dress, the one she'd bought for her company's IPO celebration, and smiled serenely at the parents who'd spent weeks whispering about her behind manicured hands. "Sarah dear," Margaret Pemberton approached with her practiced charity gala smile, "I do hope tonight we can move past all this unpleasantness and focus on what's truly important, our children's education." "Oh, absolutely," Sarah replied, her own smile equally practiced. "Tonight is definitely about what's truly important." The evening progressed with predictable pomp. Principal Harrison welcomed the crowd of 350 donors, parents, and local dignitaries. The auction raised impressive sums for educational excellence. Sarah's phone buzzed with updates from Rebecca Martinez. Everything was in position. Finally, the moment arrived. Board Chair William Ashford took the podium, his voice booming across the ballroom. "Tonight we honor someone who has dedicated 25 years to shaping young minds at Brookfield Academy. Please join me in celebrating this year's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, Mrs. Eleanor Whitman." The applause was thunderous. Mrs. Whitman, resplendent in royal blue silk, made her way to the stage with tears in her eyes, whether from joy or the champagne, Sarah couldn't tell. She accepted the crystal trophy with trembling hands and approached the microphone. "My dear friends," she began, her voice quavering with emotion, "25 years ago, I came to Brookfield Academy with a simple mission to nurture and guide the children who would become tomorrow's leaders." Sarah pressed a button on her phone. Suddenly, every screen in the ballroom, the main presentation display, the auction monitors, even the digital menu boards, flickered and changed. Mrs. Whitman's acceptance speech was replaced by Sarah's voice, clear and professional, narrating a devastating slideshow. "Good evening. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm here to show you the real Brookfield Academy." The first slide appeared, a statistical analysis showing the dramatic underrepresentation of minority students in official school photographs compared to actual enrollment numbers. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the data painted an undeniable picture of systematic exclusion. "This is Heritage Day 2024, Sarah's recorded voice continued as video footage played, footage she'd obtained from other parents who'd been recording their own children. "Watch carefully as Mrs. Whitman excludes students based on what she calls fitting the image." The room watched in horrified silence as Maya's humiliation played out in high definition, followed by similar scenes with other children. Mrs. Whitman stood frozen at the podium, the color draining from her face as her own voice filled the ballroom. "You just don't quite fit the image we're going for today." But Sarah wasn't finished. The next slides revealed Mrs. Whitman's social media activity, screenshots of discriminatory comments, shared posts from exclusionary groups, all time-stamped and verified. Then came the recorded phone conversations with school administrators discussing aesthetic decisions and maintaining the right image for donors. The ballroom erupted, donors stood from their tables, some heading for the exits, others pulling out phones to record the chaos. Mrs. Whitman gripped the podium as if it were a life preserver in a hurricane. This is taken out of context." She stammered into the microphone, her voice cracking. "These are isolated incidents blown out of proportion by a vindictive parent who..." Her words were cut off by her own recorded voice playing through the sound system. "We need to be strategic about which children appear in our promotional materials. Some families understand the importance of the school's brand image better than others." That was when the black car arrived. Actually, 3 black cars, pulling up to the main entrance in perfect formation. Through the ballroom's floor-to-ceiling windows, the crowd watched as official-looking individuals emerged. Superintendent Janet Morrison, 2 investigators from the State Civil Rights Commission, a representative from the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, and Sarah's personal favorite touch, reporters from 3 local news stations who'd been tipped off about tonight's special presentation. The gala guests watched through the windows as this official procession made their way toward the building's entrance. Cell phones began recording frantically as the reality sank in. This wasn't just a parent's revenge. This was a federal investigation. Principal Harrison rushed to the stage, trying to wrestle the microphone from Mrs. Whitman. "Ladies and gentlemen, there seems to be some technical difficulties." "No technical difficulties." Sarah's voice boomed over the sound system one final time. "Just 25 years of discrimination finally seeing the light." The ballroom doors opened, and Superintendent Morrison strode in, flanked by investigators carrying briefcases and badges. The room fell silent except for the clicking of camera shutters and the tap of high heels on marble as several major donors, including the mayor's wife and the CEO of the city's largest bank, headed straight for the exits. Mrs. Whitman finally found her voice, her carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. "This is a witch hunt. I've devoted my life to these children." Sarah Chen is a troubled woman who can't accept that her daughter simply didn't what? The voice came from the back of the room. Maya stood there in her red dress, the same one from Heritage Day, flanked by a dozen other children of color from the school, all wearing their cultural clothing, all smiling with the confidence that comes from being supported instead of silenced. Sarah had planned this moment for weeks, coordinating with the other coalition families. If Mrs. Whitman wanted to talk about which children fit the image, she'd see exactly what she'd been trying to erase. The children walked down the center aisle like a runway, each one representing years of exclusion, isolation, and systematic discrimination. Maya led them, her chin high, her smile radiant, not the frightened little girl from the courtyard, but a warrior princess claiming her space. As flash bulbs popped and investigators took notes, Mrs. Whitman collapsed into the chair behind the podium, her Lifetime Achievement Award forgotten on the floor beside her, shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. The revolution had begun. 6 months after the spring gala that became known in local education circles as the Reckoning, Sarah stood in the renovated Brookfield Academy computer lab, the same lab she'd helped fund, now bearing a plaque honoring educational equity and inclusion. The irony wasn't lost on her. Mrs. Eleanor Whitman had been terminated within 48 hours of the gala, her 25-year career ending not with retirement celebrations but with a federal civil rights investigation. The state had revoked her teaching license, and she faced personal lawsuits from multiple families. Her lifetime achievement had become a cautionary tale, discussed in education law seminars across the country. Principal Harrison and 2 board members had quietly resigned to pursue other opportunities. The new administration, led by Dr. Amara Okafor, a former federal civil rights attorney turned educator, had implemented the most comprehensive diversity and inclusion policies in the state. Every photograph, every event, every representation of Brookfield Academy now reflected the true diversity of its student body. Rebecca Martinez had delivered on every promise. The settlement was substantial, $2.3 million, with additional funds for systemic changes and ongoing oversight. More importantly, the case had set legal precedent that would protect countless other children from similar discrimination. Mrs. Amaya Sarah used half the settlement to establish the Maya Chen Foundation for Educational Equity, providing legal support and advocacy for families facing discrimination in schools nationwide. The foundation's first case was already making headlines. A public school district in Texas trying to segregate bilingual students into separate language learning photographs. But the real victory was simpler and more profound than money or legal precedent. "Mama, look." Maya burst into the computer lab, her backpack bouncing with 8-year-old energy, now 9, and radiating confidence that no teacher could diminish. "Miss Rodriguez says I can present about coding at the STEM showcase, and she wants to put my project on the website." Sarah knelt to Maya's level, remembering another excited announcement about Heritage Day that had ended so differently. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me about your project." "It's an app that translates between different languages so kids who speak different languages at home can help each other with homework. Priya gave me the idea. Her family speaks Hindi and Gujarati, and sometimes she knows the answer in one language but not English. And Carlos speaks Spanish, and Jin speaks Korean, and we figured out we could all help each other." The coalition that had formed around injustice had blossomed into genuine friendship among children who now saw diversity as strength rather than something to hide or overcome. Can they all come over this weekend? Maya continued. We want to work on the app together, and maybe Miss Rodriguez will let us present as a team instead of just me. Sarah smiled, remembering a different Maya who'd come home asking why she didn't belong anywhere. This Maya belonged everywhere, not because she'd learned to make herself smaller, but because the world around her had learned to make space. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood in the same courtyard where Maya had been excluded from the Heritage Day photo. This year's celebration looked different, not just in the faces represented, but in the joy emanating from children who felt truly seen and valued. When photography time came, there was no sorting, no aesthetic decisions, no children pushed to the margins. Dr. Okafor had instituted a new tradition, multiple photos celebrating different aspects of the school community, with every child featured prominently in at least one image. Maya stood in the center of the main group photo, flanked by her diverse group of friends, wearing the same red kapow dress that had once marked her as not fitting the image. Now it simply marked her as Maya, brilliant, kind, perfectly herself. As the photographer counted down, Sarah caught Maya's eye and gave her a thumbs up. Maya grinned back, not with the desperate hope of acceptance she'd once carried, but with the quiet confidence of a child who knew she belonged exactly where she was. The camera clicked, capturing a moment that would grace Brookfield Academy's website and promotional materials for years to come, not as a token of diversity, but as proof of transformation. Later that evening, as Sarah tucked Maya into bed, her daughter asked, "Mama, do you think Mrs. Whitman learned her lesson?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I don't know, baby. But I know that other children like you will never have to learn that lesson, the one that says they're not enough exactly as they are." Maya nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Good. Because Jin's little sister is starting kindergarten next year, and I want to make sure she knows she belongs here from day one." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of strawberry shampoo, marveling at how the child who'd once asked why she was different now spent her time ensuring others felt included. Revenge had been satisfying, swift and complete. But justice, real justice, was ongoing, expanding, transformative. It lived in every inclusive policy, every diverse photograph, every child who would never have to ask why they didn't belong. That was the victory that mattered.